It's me, Ingrid Lee. Welcome to another episode of Town Square Talks Everything 361, brought to you by Victoria Air Conditioning. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Town Square Talks Everything 361, powered by Victoria Air Conditioning. They are not comfortable until you are. It is my honor to introduce our next guest. This is Sheriff Justin Marr. How are you today, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm absolutely great. I do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us because we've got some pretty heavy topics to talk about today.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
before we get to the heavy stuff, I want to just tell you happy anniversary, 1 year anniversary as sheriff.
Yes, July 20th. The first year went by very quick. Very excited.
It is a very exciting year. Now, I want to ask you something kind of personal, but what have you learned? Now, I want to talk about the history first. You've been in law enforcement your adult life.
Yes, ma'am. I've been in law enforcement for 23 years.
Wow.
And throughout my whole career up until now, the one thing I've definitely learned is you don't take anything for granted.
Yes, sir.
Nothing is promised to us.
Tell me a little bit about where that comes from.
Well, just what we deal with in the streets on a daily basis, what we see, different people's families and lives and how they're affected by stuff. And I think a lot of times people take things for granted or expect something to be given to them, and nothing is guaranteed.
Right.
So that's kind of
the biggest thing that you've learned.
Yes, ma'am.
In the last year. Now, tell me a little bit about your prior experience with law enforcement.
I started in '98 in the jail and worked inside the jail for a couple of years. That was probably really what kick-started my law enforcement drive, desire of what I wanted to do. I learned a lot back there. Did well. The county sent me through the police academy here at Victoria College. Graduated from there, and ultimately the rest of my career was pretty well out in the field.
Let me ask you, what is the difference between being a police officer and being a sheriff deputy?
The sheriff's deputy, we have jurisdiction countywide, which includes the city.
Okay.
Where your city officers, their jurisdiction is primarily within the city limits.
Yes, sir. So that's basically, so you guys
pretty much we go through the same academy.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. And you guys are all friends?
Yes.
And you
definitely.
guys have worked together for, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you just, you have to be a team
right.
player. And everybody is. We work well with the police department. We work well with DPS, Parks and Wildlife, fire department, all the agencies.
What would you say to a young Justin Marr about what the future was going to be like for him personally? What advice would you give him?
As far as in law enforcement, hold on, you're going to get one heck of an education.
Absolutely. Are you ready to talk about the tough stuff?
Sure.
What do you think? All right. So, right away, I want to talk about human trafficking. It's been a trending story, of course, in Texas. But, I was going to share with you, I have family that lives in upstate New York. Mm-hmm. And they don't have the same kind of perspective, I feel, that Texans do when it comes to human trafficking, especially when it comes to undocumented immigrants from Mexico. Let's deep dive into human trafficking.
Well, sooner or later in time, they will feel the effects that we feel down here. Mm-hmm. Victoria, we don't feel the direct effects that border communities have.
Right.
But it all funnels through. Mm-hmm. They're just a little spread out. It's just not as consistent. But I mean, here in Victoria County alone, we've had everything you can possibly think of. We partnership with some law enforcement out of the Rosenberg area. We were able to stop and arrest 2 subjects that actually had a person detained. They were trying to collect a ransom, and the amount wasn't appropriate for them, and they fled the area, and we ultimately caught them. So that's as much human trafficking as you can get at that point.
They had 2 suspects.
People with one that was being kidnapped, held for ransom.
And ransom. Mm-hmm. Here in Victoria County, but not from Victoria.
Correct, not from Victoria.
Right.
We've had, we found a deceased person in the ditch out in the county that was, a victim of being smuggled over here.
Do you know what happened?
No, I don't know.
The story isn't completely put together yet.
They're still investigating.
Right.
The Department Homeland Security is investigating
Right.
that one. They do have some ties. It is directly related to human trafficking. I can tell you that.
Right.
We've had, deadly force issues with our officers out in the field where they're trying to run over them with vehicles. You name it.
The human traffickers are trying to run over law enforcement in the vehicles to get away to.
Yes, ma'am. The goal for them is just to flee. They don't care about anybody's life, liberty, or property. They want to complete this one job, turn around, and go do it again. It's all just money driven.
That I was going to say, is that the motivation? Is cartel involved?
Yes, definitely. Yes, ma'am. The cartel's running this. Our border, typically I would say our border is unsecured. It's an open border. And it is in the perspective from the U.S. side. But honestly, our border's very controlled. It's controlled by the cartels in Mexico. Really?
What is the purpose, though? What is the purpose for cartel to smuggle humans into? I mean, is it to divert other things that they're doing, so we're paying attention to this because we're having an issue with this?
They'll use them to smuggle drugs. That may be part of their payoff. A lot of it is just money. They make a lot of money. They control that side of the border, and if you want to come across, you're going to pay a fee, and you're paying a fee to them. If you can't pay that fee, that's when indentured servitude comes into play, and they may place you somewhere here in the U.S.
You're saying like slavery?
Yes. They may place you somewhere here in the U.S., but you're going to work for them for X amount of time to pay your debt off.
So it's not just a one-time fee to get across the border. Some of these people are going to become then...
Yes, there were some people we had encountered from China, and when ultimately we stopped them before their destination, but they were going somewhere in the Houston area, I believe, and part of their fee was they were going to have to work at this specific business for several years to pay their debt off.
So you're saying that these aren't even just from these are not just Mexican America. I mean, excuse me. These are not just from Mexico. They're not from South America, Central America. You're talking about in Asia?
All over. Yes, ma'am. Here,
they're coming from Asia into Mexico to cross our border?
Yes, ma'am. They're flying over and then crossing the border on foot.
How is that possible?
I think the last time I looked, there was over 100 different countries that we've had contact with.
That are coming through the Mexican border.
The Southwest Texas border.
Wow. That's shocking.
Yes.
That's shocking.
It's sad because it can be controlled. But, that's just some policy changes with the current administration.
Right.
But those are the effects of it.
So, in other words, and so going back to what you said, which is that in particular, people who may not live in live in our great state, don't necessarily have not necessarily experienced what we've experienced because of their demographic. They're further up into the U.S. But eventually it will.
It's going. I mean, they're not.
What do you think is the ultimate goal?
That I don't know. I don't know what their ultimate goal is, whether it's, speculate on whether they're trying to guarantee elections or I don't know what their motive is.
Right.
I just know what they've done. And basically they've encouraged people to come over. That's why we have the large influx. I mean, Border Patrol, we typically deal with the Corpus Christi unit. Well, just, I believe last week, that unit has been moved down to the Kingsville unit because they're just so overwhelmed. They've been actually pulled out of their building and moved closer to the border.
Wow.
So now when we're encountering these aliens, instead of dealing with Corpus, we're now having to take them possibly to Kingsville to turn them over, or they're having to drive further to come to us.
Can I ask you another pressing question that I have, which is, are these just Mexican cartel? Are these other?
To my knowledge, most of them are Mexico-based cartels. Okay. MS-13, I'm sure you've heard that. Cartel, gang, whatever they want to call themselves.
But not Middle East?
No. Now, there are Middle East being smuggled over, the feds will call those special interest aliens. There was a lady we actually dealt with in the northern part of Victoria County. It was one of the use of force days that she has ties to the Middle East.
Oh, I see.
Her, I believe, ex-husband or some kind of relationship, he's actually wanted by the feds. And,
So a female human smuggler, I thought.
Oh, yeah. It's out there.
Right.
Kids are doing it. They're recruiting young kids, 18-year-olds, to drive a load across the border and take them. It's all just money. And they're offering plenty of it. I mean, people are definitely taking them up on it.
Do these undocumented citizens, are they being told the truth? I mean, I guess I already feel like I'll know the answer to that. But are they believing that there's the American dream and the possibility to be a part of the American dream when they're loading up into these dangerous situations where they're in trucks and they're in vehicles? Or do they not have an idea of what the risk and the danger and the long-term, debt will be like?
Yeah, I think that's what they're hoping for. I think you have two types of groups coming into the country. Okay, I mean, we can talk numbers of, how many Border Patrols encountered. Realistically, they're only encountering about 10% of what's coming across, which is sad because those numbers are very high. You have a group that is marching across the border and turning themselves in to Border Patrol, saying, I'm here, take care of me now. And then you have a large group that we primarily deal with that are sneaking in to the country. I don't know I can only assume what their intentions are for. They're wanting to be in here, but undetected. Obviously, some type of criminal activity. And then there's the main group that, no, we're here. I want you to know we're here. Now, help us out.
Right. That's very heavy stuff. What do you want Victoria County to know when it comes to human trafficking and it comes to protecting themselves? And what if they encounter?
Most of these that we run across, rest assured, they're not coming to Victoria to park themselves here. I mean, some may, but most of them, there's a destination they're trying to get to. They are just passing through.
Larger cities.
If you come into contact with them, just be good eyes and ears for us, law enforcement. Call us. Let us deal with them.
Do not act.
Yes, do not act. Just if you can have good eyes and ears and information, vehicle descriptions, anything like that. If you, suspect something's going on like that, let us look into it. I mean, that's what we're here for, to keep you safe. And I think we do a good job at it. And, I don't want there to be panic through the county, but everybody needs to step out of their comfort zone a little bit. Make sure, especially the people out in the county, make sure your doors are locked, your truck keys are taken into the house. Isn't
that called like a crime of convenience? We're having an issue with that because we've just been so relatively safe for so long.
It's a crime of opportunity.
Right, crime of opportunity. Thank you.
They'll walk through and they take what's easy. They don't want to work for it. They're not going to try to break a window and necessarily do all the mechanical work to get the vehicle going.
Right.
They want to find the vehicle that has the keys left in the cup holder.
So don't make it easy for them.
Yeah. Just, secure yourself, your belongings.
I remember, I'll never forget moving here from San Antonio, and most of the people that I knew that were in the apartment complex didn't lock their doors, didn't lock their vehicles. I mean, it was just something that was very, very interesting to me. Or lots of cowboys putting, out on the ranch out here where we're at, who just leave either their trucks running or leave their keys in the ignition. And I'm like, wow, that never occurs in San Antonio.
No,
and that was, 2 or 3 almost 3 decades ago.
Everybody's comfortable, and honestly, that's nice. We should be comfortable.
Right.
But the reality is there's a specific element out there that's going to take advantage of it.
Right.
And
right now that element is heavy.
If you don't want to be a victim, these are just some simple tips you can take that will more than likely prevent you from being victimized.
What do you think the average Victoria County member can do to maybe help in participating in securing our borders?
Well, I mean, their voice to our legislatures and, governor, that obviously helps. The governor seems to be very involved right now.
Right. Is it true that we bought the building material that was necessary to build the wall prior to this change in administration, and that those materials are sitting there?
From what I understand, for the wall that the federal government was putting up under Trump.
Yes, sir.
Those contracts were paid. The materials there, they were paid for the job already. During the administration change, they halted the work.
Wow. So it is true.
It's not a matter of funding the wall. The wall has been funded. Now the problem is we're actually having to pay fees because we've broken our contract with this company.
And by we, you're talking about taxpayers.
Yes, the federal government, the taxpayers. We're having to pay fees because we've broken the contract and halted construction. Well, those companies have to hire hundreds and thousands of people.
Right.
And, so they entered into a contract and it was bought and paid for.
Right.
Now we're stopping that. It's actually costing us more money to not build the wall than what's already been paid for.
Wow. And it's been so taxing on law enforcement. It sounds like every division.
Our federal partners down on the border, they are just overwhelmed. They've never seen anything like this before. And, they're, I don't know how long we can sustain that.
I see. That is heavy, and I appreciate so much your candor and honesty, to come here and say, okay, here is where we're at. And this is why then a direct result for why we're seeing these types of arrests being made and these types of, you said, what were you calling them? Where they're running...
The bailouts?
The bailouts, yes, sir.
That's typically, and those are dangerous, because they put everybody in all the vehicles at risk.
Right.
The citizens out on the road, the property damage, the multiple fences that are run through.
Right.
It's a dangerous, they're desperate to get away so they can turn around and do the job again.
And see, that's what I wanted to lead into is the bailouts. You had said something before, and I know you'll share it again, which is if you see an oddity, and you say, like, if you're traveling in the back like I do, we live on a ranch, we're 100 acres out there, and there's suddenly like a teddy bear on a pole or something that looks odd, you were saying that might actually be
it could be some kind of marker indicator.
Yes.
The people that live out in the country, especially a little more rural area, y'all know who belongs out there.
Yes, sir.
You know what the norm is.
Yes, sir.
When there's something outside of the norm, that's what we need to look into. You may think it's silly and there's nothing to it, but that's part of our job is let us know, let us look into it and check, because there's a good chance that there's something not right.
Right. It's not like a sweet symbolism that a kid lives there, that kind of thing.
Right.
It might be actually some sort of landmark that they're using. That's very, very interesting.
And like I said, the border towns, they're overrun. Victoria and all the surrounding counties around here, we're busy. I talk to the sheriffs, it's just a gamble of, does Lavaca have one, or Goliad or Jackson, or is it Victoria this week? We're all chasing them, dealing with them. But that ultimately, if Border Patrol is only catching maybe 10% of them, think about all the ones that we're all missing.
Right.
And that's where, like, your people in New York or anywhere in this country, they're coming your way.
Right.
It may take it a while before you notice the effects, but you will notice the effects. I promise you that.
Mm-hmm. Again, thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about your team.
All right.
I want to talk about your team. So what makes up a department, a sheriff's department?
It's sheriff's office.
Sheriff's office. Okay, yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Our office is, we have a detention unit, which is the largest unit in the office. We have a courts and extradition. We have special crimes. We have a crime scene. We're responsible. We have a school resource officers. We have the patrol unit, the investigation unit. We have an interdiction unit. I'm probably missing one or two, but we're a big office. It's around 235 employees.
Wow.
Yeah. And the jail takes up the bulk of it.
Right, right. Are you, so there's the sheriff and then there's the deputies,
Yes.
right? Correct? How many deputies do you have?
Licensed peace officers,
Yes, sir.
We're probably running around 120, 130.
120 to 130. Wow. What do you think about, like, you want to shout out to your team?
Hey, they're amazing. I mean,
Yeah, they really are.
This is the job we do. Doesn't have anything to do about me.
Right.
It's a team effort, and we have a great team. Yeah, I'm very proud to work with them and for them, which is what I do now. My job is to facilitate things to make their job easier, so they're successful at their job. And working on both sides of it now, it's kind of, it's rewarding for me. But no, it's a great team. I'm sold in it.
Yes.
I love it.
You're here for
it's family. It really
Right.
is.
Is there anything that our community can do to help to inspire or to show your office appreciation for all that they do?
Honestly, just a simple thank you goes a long ways. When you see a man and woman in uniform out and about,
Always.
wherever,
I always do that.
just a random thank you.
Thank you.
And truthfully, that goes miles.
Right.
Not because we deal with people that are usually kind of at one of their worst moments.
Right.
Doesn't mean they're bad people. They're just having a bad time.
Sure.
And sometimes that can kind of weigh on you time after time.
Sometimes
after time.
good people make bad mistakes.
Right. And
yes.
so it's nice just to get the random thank you. That really goes a long ways.
Now, what about for community members that want to visit with you? Where would you send them so that they could have a conversation with you?
To my office. Call me.
Just right to your office?
I'm there. 9 out of 10 times I'm there, and
Right.
I'm here to visit with anybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you do to keep our community and our county safe. And, of course, to all of the folks that work with you. Thank you, to them as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any final thoughts before we go?
No, I'm just, like I said, I'm honored to get to serve Victoria in this capacity.
Yes, sir.
And I look forward to continuing to do that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, sir. And thank you all for listening. This has been another episode of Town Square Talks Everything 361, powered by Victoria Air Conditioning. They're not comfortable until you are.